If you have not constructed your own house, you cannot be too sure about its history. You can think what you will, but if you do not get a background check of the place you live in, you can never actually know the kind of history it has. This woman had lived in her home for many years, but soon started feeling like they were not alone in the house. There would be suspicious activities and incidents occurring one day after the other. When the strange and unexplainable incidents started to take place, the woman grew more worried day by day. There were days when she felt like she was hallucinating, that everything was all in her head. Maybe it was a waking nightmare that she needed to snap out of. She could not get a clear explanation of why all this was happening. She felt like she was trapped inside a horror movie. However, even though she at times felt like this was just a dream, there were so many pieces of evidence that pointed towards it definitely being real. She was a resident at the house for such a long time now, and so the idea of it being haunted was a little hard to digest. She soon decided to hold an investigation to find out once and for all why these things were happening. Her discovery made her tremble with shock, and the owner of the house certainly did not have an easy life. Tracy, the owner of the house, had to go through a lot in life and was certainly not a stranger to obstacles and threats. Being a single mom of 5 kids, she was living in Rock Hill, South Carolina with all of them. She had been working and struggling to put food on the table for her and her kids for a few years now. Since she had 5 kids, the single mom had to earn quite a lot if she wanted to provide for all of them. She had been struggling to earn enough for her family to be stable, since the family was not well-to-do. Even though some kids were adults, they still had to live under the same roof. Even though they struggled with money, this was all in all a very happy family. Then the mysterious occurrences started to happen, threatening the safety of everyone in the house. And so the family, although they had a few monetary problems, got along fine and was not at all an unhappy family. And so it was a very ordinary day in September when Tracy started to hear weird noises that seemed to be coming from inside the attic. She got the sense that this was nothing but an intruder. However, she was always careful enough to lock the doors and windows, which made this a little impossible. Tracy had a very good reason as to why she needed to lock the doors and windows. Since she and her kids were actually residing in the bad part of town, there were often reports of burglaries. It was, in fact, a very common occurrence. Since she knew there was no way someone could have broken into her home, she convinced herself that it was her mind that was playing tricks on her. But soon she found out that it was not her mind. And even though Tracy thought it was all in her head, there was a clear reason why this would not be so. She still continued to hear the odd sound and noises. They were still coming from the attic in her home. This was going on for a few days now. She got so worried that she questioned if it was her kids that were playing in the attic. But when she asked them, they all told her that it was not them. She could easily believe that it was not her kids that were playing in the attic because it was way too musty and dark. For kids to actually enjoy playing there was a little unbelievable, and even Tracy was not really a huge fan of the attic. She would only ever go there if she needed to keep something there or take an item from there. The noises still continued, so she soon came up with an explanation of her own. And so one random day, Tracy could hear that the sound went from one room to the next. This was a very strange sound, too. If she was not cleaning the house, Tracy could not have heard these noises. She told herself that it was either a raccoon or a possum that had been living in their attic. And if this was the case, she knew she would have to call upon the help of animal control. And it was a little unfortunate because this took place on a Saturday. The animal control people had an off on the weekends, so she would have to call them first thing Monday. She felt a little better as she thought this noise was made by these tiny wild animals, and soon she would learn that the sound in the attic had some other plans of its own. The sounds from the attic were not resting, and it was still continuing even in the wee hours of the morning. This incident happened at about 2:30 a.m. that night. A very disturbing creaking sound managed to wake up poor Tracy from her sleep. The sound originated from her bedroom ceiling. This was then followed by the thumping sound that occurred on her bedroom floor. After the sounds made Tracy wake from her sleep, she got up and took a look around her bedroom. She then noticed that there were several nails on the carpet. She had assumed that these nails had come from the ceiling boards, and now she was filled with fear. After she saw this, it was clear that the thing in the attic was not a measly raccoon or possum. What was it then? And when all this happened, there was only one thing that was running through Tracy's head. She thought to herself there was some poltergeist stuff going on. How could the nails from the ceiling fall? It was something that was a bit too strange. However, Tracy was a little scared to go up to the attic and check, so the only thing left to do was to try and sleep once more. For something as weird as the incident to take place, who in their right mind would be able to go back to sleep? Tracy's mind was racing as she thought of what could possibly be haunting her attic. Since it was her home, she certainly could not lose it, judging from how poor they were. Tracy could not leave the house because of her assumptions, so the next day she decided to hold an investigation. So after trying hard to sleep again after the scary experience at night, she finally slept again. And as soon as she woke up, Tracy found out that her nephew had stopped by to come and hang out with the two grown-up sons. They were planning to spend some time in the house. She was glad to know that all three young men would be home, as she had a very traumatic experience the previous night. And then when she got a chance, she told the boys to go up to the attic and requested them to check it out. She wanted to know for sure that she was not dreaming last night, that everything happened for real. She also wished to uncover what the source was. The men then went up to check the attic while Tracy stayed near the attic door in the hallway. What the guys found was a total shock. As soon as they got up to the attic, the three young men could sense that there was something wrong. They could immediately tell that something was just not right. When they went inside the attic, they could tell that there was a good reason why Tracy had been having so many suspicions. They were welcomed with a nasty stench, and there was garbage everywhere in the attic. When they looked around the attic, Tracy's nephew and two sons could see her old jackets and coats had been packed up and kept next to the heating unit. Tracy was indeed the one who kept them up in the attic, storing them nicely. This was certainly not the way she kept them in the first place. After snooping around some more, the boys then caught a glimpse of a body. As the guys looked around the attic, the body that was lying in one corner then started to move. The stranger, who was seemingly asleep while still unaware that he had been found. But after peeping, he could see that there were three guys looking straight at him. They were staring at each other for a few seconds. After seeing the man, everyone in the attic froze. After their awkward stare that lasted a few seconds, the stranger then made a move. He suddenly stood up and proceeded to run past them. And this stranger was so quick that the boys did not even get the chance to grab hold of him. Tracy was lucky enough to be able to have a look at him before he rushed down the stairs and escaped out the door. She then realized that he was no stranger at all. And after this confusing incident took place, Tracy immediately did what she thought was right. She quickly took her phone and called the cops. However, by the time they reached, the intruder was already long gone. But since Tracy caught a glimpse of the guy, she could identify him. 12 years earlier, the man who was in the attic had helped with some housework. And as Tracy went on, she revealed that the two of them were more than friends, too. Tracy had even dated this squatter for a little while, according to her. But sadly, due to his history of criminal tendencies, Tracy had no choice but to break up with him. This guy did not receive this news in a good way and was adamant on getting back with her. After things did not work out between them and Tracy broke up with the man, he still wanted Tracy back. She did not want anything to do with the criminal, so she turned him down. He then stole her truck, which she eventually got back after calling the police on him. Even after he got out of prison, the guy still went after Tracy, telling her that he was a changed man, that he wanted to try again. After stealing her car, he was arrested. Then, after he was released, the last thing that Tracy heard about the guy was that he had moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And since she didn't want anything to do with him, she was glad, but she still felt like these were just rumors. However, she would soon discover that this was all a lie, that the guy was actually always closer to her than she thought. Police then arrived at Tracy's house despite the fact that he had already left and escaped. Then they did some investigation and checking. They found out that he had been living there the whole time. They even suspected that the man was living in the attic for several weeks. He had packed all the old coats and jackets into a heating unit and was sleeping in the heating unit, revealed Tracy. It must have been somewhat of a relief for Tracy to learn that her house was not actually possessed, that it was actually her crazy ex who had made all the racket in the attic. Also, the police were able to dig up a few plastic cups that had been used by the guy to relieve himself. This was the source of the foul stench the attic was reeking from. Then there was yet another very startling discovery being made. And then the police, after looking through the house, realized that the guy had actually reconfigured the air vents to be able to peep at Tracy while she was in bed. He had been watching Tracy sleep this whole time. Tracy was mortified to learn that she had been spied on this whole time. It got me flabbergasted, she even stated in an interview she later gave. Tracy was so creeped out by the fact that the intruder had been spying through the air vents, exclaiming, "How can you look at someone through an air vent?" Still, the mystery of how this guy was able to crawl up to the attic and stay there had not been answered. There was only one opening, and it was the hallway door between her kid's bedroom. But everyone was glad the threat and stranger in the attic were gone. Authorities have been able to identify who the person was, but still, he is untraceable. The police still do not know where his whereabouts are. They have not yet been able to locate or get any tip on where Tracy's intruder X has escaped to. And so he is still a free man who is roaming the streets and who knows might still return. Tracy noticed someone who looked like him near her house one day, but the police found nothing. She feels that this man is a threat to her and her family, so she hopes that the cops are able to arrest him as soon as possible. She is doing whatever she can in her power to help him get caught. "I want him to be charged with it," she revealed. "It could be somebody else he does the same thing to, but she might not be so lucky. We hope you never have a crazy ex or intruder in your house like poor Tracy." Also, here are 5 weird home invasion stories you need to read. This might be one of the hungriest intruders you have ever read about. So in Staffordshire, England, the police were called to one of the homes. There they had to arrest a 36-year-old man who had eaten the victim's chips, corned beef, and sauce, pickles, 2 ice creams, and a can of Coke. This was not all that the intruder did. He even went inside the bathtub right after. There was an incident in India where an intruder went inside a disabled woman's home. Since the woman was a brave one, she quickly took hold of her wooden back scratcher and started beating the stranger with it. She thought this was not enough, so she went and got herself a wrench and continued beating him. The intruder fled the scene and was never heard from again. In the month of March 2011, Nichita Davis and Delaney Douglas stayed in their Charlotte home when 2 burglars came in. The burglars stole some money and jewelry, but sadly, when they left, they forgot a shirt with one of the burglars' face with "Making money is my thing" written on it. As it turned out, this was the suspect's booking photo of another crime he was about to commit. There were so many incidents where intruders take baths in people's houses that you are left to question if they just need a bath. In 2018, there was a woman who had returned to her home in Monroe, Louisiana, to discover that a stranger was sitting in her bathtub munching on a packet of Cheetos. The burglar also kept food items in the toilet lid as well. When Mark Smith attempted to burglarize a house in North Shields, England, his pregame was a little too much, mixing vodka with Valium. He went and took a pair of gold earrings and a checkbook from the house. He must have had too much, as the lady who owned the house later found Smith passed out under her bed with the gold earrings when she returned home. The thief was sent to jail asleep.